My name is Randy Stewart. I'm 53 years old. I think my story is a little different than a lot of people's when I go out and I'm around people in recovery. There's a whole lot of damage and dysfunction in early life. I had a pretty normal childhood. When you There's like this ACE score, adverse childhood effects. Um, Actually, it's funny. Me and my wife has like 8 out of 10 of those, and I had 1 out of 10. My parents were divorced. That was really my only, I guess, dysfunction growing up. Raised in church all my life. Had a very, I always knew even though they were divorced, I always knew my dad loved me. He was always there for me. Raised by my mom until I was like 13, and then I ended up moving in with my dad for a while. But um, other than doing a little bit of fighting, I was never in trouble. My life was just about as normal as can be for a child of a divorced parents. Um, I got married at age 20. We began our family in church. If you'd have told somebody, I'm 53 years old now, if you'd have told somebody when I was 23 that I was going to end up as an addict, they would have said no possible way. Not that guy. It's just kind of the life I led. Around, I'd say it was 35, 36 years old before my addiction even started. A couple different injuries took place, and it's kind of the story you hear from a lot of people where you go from the Vicodin prescribed for an injury to the Percocet to the Oxys to the Roxy. You just make that progression. And I spent probably from around 2008-ish till 2014 as a pill addict. Got hooked pretty bad to the point where I was buying so many pills. I was spending a couple $100s a day. I don't know how I was coming up with it, but somehow I was. So it just became horrible in 2014 by that time. That's kind of when the big push, all the doctors to cut their people down or cut them off from the drugs. So I ended up getting an OVI driving on my medication. My doctor pretty much just cut me off cold turkey. She said, I'm not going to risk my license when you've already shown you have a problem and whatever. So she just cut me off cold turkey. Well, I'm in panic mode at that point because what I was getting from her plus what I was buying on the side, now I have to try to find a way to buy them all. And it wasn't, in my head, it wasn't even an option to stop. It just wasn't going to be possible. So I probably went a few months just trying to buy them, just trying to get a hold of wherever I could get a hold of. And they were so dried up. The place that I worked, there were several guys around and girls around that had pills. And we kind of had our little network in there. You know, if you're out, I'll help you out until you get yours, and then you help me out. And everybody was drying up. Nobody could find anything. And I remember going to this one guy this day, and I said, can you find me anything? I can't find anything at all. Now, granted, keep in mind, I was naive to hardcore drugs other than the pills. I was real naive to that. So he said, the only thing I can find you is something you're not going to want. He said, that's what I've been doing for the past couple weeks. So what's that? He said, heroin. I said, oh, no, you're right. I don't want that. So the next morning, the withdrawals were so bad, and I was so sick, still hadn't found anything. And I just said, all right, tell me heroin. Tell me what it does, what it's about. And he said, well, it's the same thing. He goes, it's an opiate. It's going to the opiate receptors. It's the exact same thing. It's just a lot stronger. So in my head, I'm thinking, I got to find something. I'm so sick. So I gave him $20. I said, okay, here's $20. Just give me whatever you can get me for that $20. So he went out at lunch that day and came back with 2 little capsules. Um, those 2 capsules lasted me 2 days. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm spending all this money and $20 a day, I can be okay. So that's began the heroin addiction. Fast forward a year and a half after that, and I'm spending a couple $100 a day on pills now, or I mean on heroin and fentanyl now. So it took me places I never thought I would go. Um, areas of literally areas where most people would not step foot in. I was comfortable there, walking around the streets. So it was, and like I said, if you'd have told somebody 20 years prior to that it was going to be me, they would have probably laughed you out of the building. Um, it became very bad very quick. And the reason I put that year and a half mark in there is in November of 2018, oh, 16, I'm sorry, November of 2016. I was supposed to have a doctor's appointment that morning. I was, um, I didn't have any drugs, so I knew. So I was living here in Xenia at the time. The guy I was buying from was in Springfield. So I drove to Springfield, which is, since whoever's seeing this, it's about a 30-minute drive. People watching this probably don't know where Ohio is. But anyway, it's probably about a 30-minute drive. When I got there, the guy I always bought from, he said, I have some different stuff right now. He's like, it's a lot stronger. He said, I would give you something to try. You just try it out and see what you think. He goes, but don't do this while you're driving. Make sure you do it around people. He's like, this stuff is super strong. And I thought, yeah, right. He's a dealer. He's trying to get me to buy this stuff because it's so much stronger. So I get in my car, and before I'm driving down the road, I decide that I'm going to go ahead and use it. I use the normal amount I normally do, and went off the road. Actually, flipped my car this way, hit a driveway culvert, and then I hit the driveway, and it flipped my car this way, and then rolled out into a field. Overdosed behind the wheel. Broke my neck, broke my back. Pretty significant stuff. My vertebral artery was kinked as a result of this accident. Basically, I still need to clarify how long, but I was dead on the scene, and they revived me. Someone driving behind me had seen me swerving all over the road, so luckily the cop thought to try Narcan, because he could have easily just seen my car had flipped out into a field and thought I had died from those injuries. But because the car behind me told them he was all over the road before he wrecked, he thought there's a possibility I could have been high or whatever, so he hit me with Narcan. So that brought me back. Started a long recovery process. And when I went into the doctors for my follow-ups after I had to have surgeries and rods and stuff put in my neck and my back, he said, I've never seen this significant of damage to vertebrae without complete paralysis. He said, why you're able to walk just doesn't hardly make sense to me. The doctor who had 2 different neurosurgeons that were working on me, the guy who did the vertebral artery, he said, your vertebral artery was kinked off enough. He said you shouldn't be alive. He said, you should have been having stroke after stroke after stroke. And he said, why you're not, I don't know. I know now why. Because God didn't see fit that it was my time. And I had some things I needed to do, some people I needed to help. So anyway, first they didn't know if I was going to live. I lived. Then they didn't know if I was going to walk. I walked. My right arm was paralyzed. It came back partially in about 3 months, and then completely in 2 years later, 3 years later, something like that. I still have a little bit of issue with the tricep muscle that doesn't really work well. But other than that, I'm walking, I'm moving. And you would have thought that after an accident like that, that that would have put an end to my addiction. But I think the day I got out of the hospital, or 2 days after I got out of the hospital, I ended up using again. Just that quick. So started the roller coaster of rehabs, in and out, in and out. I think I shouldn't say in and out, but like five. I was in rehab 5 different times. Um, I would do good for a couple months, and then right back on the run again. Um, Fast forward, I'll skip a whole bunch of stuff here, but fast forward to 2021. Um, I got put in jail. Um, I was in jail 3 different times. But luckily, none of them were long stays like some people have to go through. So, but I was in jail, and it was for a probation violation because I had used and then went and peed dirty for my probation officer. I She said, I'm not going to send you back to one of the programs you've already been to because obviously that doesn't work. So she came to me and she said, there's a place in Xenia, it's called Jeremiah Tree. It's a faith-based program, which, because of the way I was raised in church and started my early life and my marriage and everything in church, I kind of always knew that my answer was going to have to be through my relationship with God. Um, I don't ever want to run down A and NA because I know a lot of people who have had a lot of success with that. But for me, it felt like bondage because every time I went to those meetings, all I heard was once an addict, always an addict. You're always going to struggle with this. You're always going to have these issues. You're never, you know, I would see people at meetings stand up and say, I'm clean today. I don't know about tomorrow, but I'm clean for today. And I always thought, you've been clean for 5 years. When do you go from recovery to recovered? I never understood that. Um, so I think that's what kept me from really doing well in those programs. Is it just always felt like bondage. Like if I'm gonna have to fight this the rest of my life, why try? Um, when I went into Jeremiah Tree, I heard something different. I heard through your relationship with the Lord, you can be free from this. You can be free. You don't have to be an addict anymore. And it was a light bulb was like, you know, and I had known this. Like I said, I always felt that way, but just being in a place that pushed that and recognized that, um, and they taught me not to focus so much on not being addicted, not using, because always before you're like struggle and strain that, I'm gonna fight this. Today I'm not gonna get high. It's always gonna be a struggle and a strain. It's kind of a shift, and don't even really focus on your addiction right now. Focus on your relationship with God and let that addiction fall off. And I began to do that, and that's exactly what happened. Um, Through a relationship with the Lord, through a relationship um, with my family being restored, just so many things happened so rapidly. And next month will be 4 years I've been clean. Um, Surprisingly and amazingly, I have some trust from people I never thought I would have trust from. Um, Throughout all this time, I'm still married to the same woman. We had separated 3 or 4 times, but each time we separated, it was only 3 or 4 months. And as I look back at that, I think the way God used her in my life, I look at some of the times that she said, "Get out of here. I'm not putting up with you anymore." That's exactly what she should have done because I would have caused more damage at home. Other times when she said, you can stay, I look back at that, and if I'd have left at that time, it would have been all bad. I would have overdosed somewhere, I would have died. So I think God really used her, to navigate the right way to get me where I needed to be. So Um, we just last week celebrated 33 years of marriage. Our marriage is strong. It's going good. Things are amazing in my life right now. Uh, all the things that we lost, we're actually building a new house right now. All the things that I lost through the addiction and because of the addiction, I feel like has been brought full circle. And this is like a moment of everything's been brought back. And it's not because of me, it's because of him. The only part I played in it was finally being smart enough to say, okay, you do it, because I can't do it. So I have the opportunity to now work for the place that I went through, Jeremiah Tree. I also work here. We're filming this in a shelter right now. I'm also here at the shelter. I have connections with a couple different recovery places in town where, for some reason, they trust me. I'm allowed to come get their guys, take them out, help them, pour into them. It's just like, just like 20 years ago, nobody would have ever believed I was going to be an addict. Now, I don't think anybody that knew me as an addict would believe where I'm at now. I skipped a whole lot of the messy stuff, but my life is completely turned around. And I'm thoroughly convinced that, I hate to say this, I don't ever want to hammer down on the AA model. But in myself, I'm completely convinced that going by that model, there are a lot of people who've stayed sober. But I don't think there's any way to truly be completely free without your relationship with God. So again, I'm not hammering on them. I know a lot of people who've done well. A ton of my friends are AA and A people. So I'm not hammering on that. That's brought a lot of people. But if you want true freedom, it comes to that relationship with Christ. And I'm totally, thoroughly, 100% convinced of that. So it's just a little quick snapshot of my story.